Joan Collins.
First of all, I'd like to thank my colleague Deputy Brahan for tabling this private member's motion on homelessness. This motion was to be moved last December, but by agreement it was postponed to allow for other business. And it is certainly as relevant, if not even more so today. Homelessness permeates right throughout our society. The stark figures Deputy Brahan gave there of the number of children, 8,000 right across the board, is very, very stark. But it also must be very extremely embarrassing for any government to see in this year, celebrating 100 years on from the first Dáil, Army veterans using the tricolour themed sleeping bags, they're now dubbed sleeping flags, to highlight the issue of homelessness among ex-service personnel. This is part of a campaign to raise funds for the services provided by the Ex-Service Personnel Organisation 1, which depend on public charity to continue. Ollie O'Connor of One says hundreds of Army veterans end up homeless. He said they have helped 900 homeless ex-Army personnel since they opened up their first hotel. Now, last night when I was leaving here at about 5 to 11, there was a gentleman asleep outside the Dáil gates. His name is James Mee. I found out this morning. I was talking to him. I didn't wake him up, but as I said, spoke to him this morning. He's 30-year service on the Monaghan board, has done tour in the Lebanon, and he was out sleeping last night to highlight the issue of his colleagues finding themselves homeless and sleeping on our streets. The first hostel, the hostel Brú na Bhín, cost in 2017 was 839,000 to run. 44,000 came from the Department of Justice, 183,000 came in from a grant from the Dublin Regional Homeless Executive, and 600,000 had to be raised through funding. Minister, that's disgraceful. I think that has to be addressed. No doubt, once again, we'll be bombarded with statistics claiming progress by the government, and I will concede some progress is at last being made. 18,000 new housing units were built last year, mainly in Dublin, where new units rose by a third. But this is still way below the 30,000 units a year, which is generally accepted as being needed. There's also a big question as to how many of these new builds in the private sector are actually affordable to people on average incomes. The Housing Investment Programme are predicting 6,200 public housing units this year, almost double that of last year, but again, well short of 10,000 a year plus required. Yesterday, at your summit, Minister, there was a quote of 8,400 new build, lease voids, acquisitions, HAP and RAS. How many of these were built by local authorities? How many of these were built by housing associations? Last year, in 2017, you pulled a figure of 7,000 of the same category, and we found out afterwards that in reality, only 394 local authority houses were built. Apparently, a special purpose vehicle will be established this quarter to enable credit unions to invest in approved housing bodies. But how long ago is it that the credit unions expressed a desire to use a portion of their reserve funds in this way? It's all too little, too slow. And as the crisis carried on, it is doing untold damage to homeless children and young adults. There are statistics and there are the people affected by this crisis. The latest scientific medical evidence suggests that good nutrition, play, a feeling of security are crucial to the development of children's brains and motor skills. The lack of these crucial elements in formative years can physically impair brain development and can have long-lasting effects throughout life. And it's precisely these things that children in temporary accommodation without cooking facilities, areas to play in and mixed with other children are often deprived of. Similar points can be made in relation to the effects of homelessness on our young adults. Homelessness on young adults has doubled in the last 4 years. Young adults are at a crucial point in their emotional, cognitive and social development, transitioning from adolescence to adulthood. Difficult experience can again have lifelong consequences. It is much more difficult for this group to exit homelessness. They are not entitled to public housing. They can't afford the astronomical rates or rents in the private sector, and particularly on their welfare payments, where they're half-rate job seekers. There was a group last week called the Irish Coalition to End Youth Homelessness, had a briefing over in Buswells, and they made the point very strongly that there should be a housing first for young adults as well, and I think that should be taken on board. That is why, in particular, this government's response. Do you really have to respond to these points made in the private member's motion, declare a housing emergency and a referendum on the right to housing?